This thing going. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the RFID Journal live conference. This is my first conference. Never attended this before. The title of my presentation is Small, the New Big Business. It's not your typical talk you'll hear in the conference. I think you hear from a lot of big companies because that's a lot of who's implementing RFID solutions today. We are not a big company. We're a small company, a really small company that's grown out of another small company. So, I think we all kind of share a few things in common in the manufacturing industry, and that is that we live and work in this fast-paced world where technology can prove disruptive, and we all want to be on the right side of that disruption. We also work in an industry, manufacturing, that's been a little bit slow to adopt technology, and when compared to our tech-happy friends in retail. So I'm hoping that while telling my story, you can take away a few key points that I think are underlying concepts for successful innovations, especially in the RFID space. My story really starts with my father. In 1982, he started a distribution company called O-Ring Sales and Service. We sell O-rings, really creative name, I'm sure everybody loves it. And right now we're 21 people. We have a single location in Kansas City, and this year we'll sell about $9 million in O-rings and seals and gaskets all over the U.S. Our RFID innovation story starts inside this company really in 2012. And in 2012, we undertook a really big project for a small company that's implementing a new ERP system. And my dad's not the most tech-savvy person, so he put myself and my three brothers. I work with three brothers, so it works quite well, usually. All four of us tackled this project, this ERP implementation. And it was during this implementation, really long, laborious process, that we learned a really valuable lesson that changed the trajectory of our small company. And that was when you boil it down to the essence of its success, why the company is successful, and what's driving this company and our decisions, it was all about the data. Data drove our company, data drove our decisions. We felt like we made the decisions, but typically data is making them for us. So that kind of realization changed how we started to run and manage our company. And in the years preceding that, we set out to basically allow data to drive every aspect of our own little company. So it started small. We wrote small pieces of code to automate business practices and processes in our business. And maybe wrote some companion applications, tied them into our ERP. It's nothing extremely fancy. Really, our first big step into this IoT innovation was a smart counting scale. So we're going through our company, making it fast and smart and automated, data-driven, and we got to shipping. And in the shipping department, if you can imagine, I buy thousands and thousands and thousands of O-rings, little tiny parts, and I got to ship them to my customers in accurate quantities. And they want weird stuff too. I want 455 of this O-ring, and if you ship me 454, I'm going to be angry. So we use really precise counting scales, and they count the parts by establishing a piece weight for each part. And when we were doing this kind of efficiency study, we found that it takes about 5 minutes for every item shipped for our shipping department to count out these pieces. So my brothers and I came up with this idea to use a counting scale that was networked with the rest of our database and with our ERP system that would automate a large portion of the process. The problem was the scale industry had nothing like that. And we looked and looked, couldn't find anything, so we just ended up inventing it. And what we did to make it all work was used a small computer called a Raspberry Pi, and we embedded it inside an off-the-shelf counting scale like the one in the picture. And that little computer then communicated with our database, with our ERP, and then with the scale itself. And then the user communicated with this whole system now through an Android app or an iPhone. So there's an old iPod Touch there that I think I stole from one of my kids. And we created this mobile app, and it allowed the shippers to basically just go scan, scan, dump, and the scale would read out the correct piece count for the shipper. So it cut out 5 minutes on every line item. And when we stepped back from that kind of invention, we realized that we, after some time studies, saved our shipping department 1 to 2 hours per day per shipper, which is a really big efficiency gain for us. and it also made us really accurate. So that was a game-changing one for us, and it's also a freebie for you guys. If you have some entrepreneurs out there that want to pursue a smart scale, we did a terrible job with the intellectual property. It's completely up for grabs. You guys can go commercialize it. It's a freebie. It's a really good idea. And it leads me to my first point. I'm kind of telling you stuff that has nothing to do with RFID, because my first point, if you really want to drive profitable innovation in your company, my first point is you have to start small. You have to think small. Big innovations, they're typically not this aha moment. You don't wake up one day with this game-changing idea and just light the world on fire. You typically have to work at it and drive at it. And it's this small set of races that you run to get you to your final goal. So start small, think small. That will lead you to big innovation. To illustrate this point, I want to step back in time a little bit. We're currently working in the fourth industrial revolution, or sometimes called Industry 4.0. Step back to 1901, 1902, and you'd be in the second industrial revolution. And at that time, there was a company, very famous today, called Ford Motor Company. There's a common misconception that I think a lot of people today think that Henry Ford woke up one night, just sat up in bed and said, I got it. We should be manufacturing our vehicles on a moving assembly line. And it just was not the case. Actually, Ransom Olds, his competitor at Oldsmobile, had patented the assembly line in 1901. But what made Henry Ford famous? What made him, allowed him to put his mark on the industry in the second industrial revolution was his company, really through necessity and through a long period of time from 1908 to 1913, innovated the assembly line slowly, gradually, starting small, with small incremental improvements that eventually led to this modern moving assembly line, where we have cars moving down a linear line, the chassis themselves are moving, and the people are attaching stuff to them. So that was our company. That was where we were as a small company. We were making these small innovations, these baby steps, and learning a lot along the way, and allowed us to step back and the small pieces of code, the counting scale, and look at our company as a whole and come up with this aha kind of moment. And that was ShelfAware. That's a company I'm currently managing. And ShelfAware is an intelligent inventory platform. And to really explain it, or where it was born, I have to kind of take you into my niche, which is industrial distribution. And it's not a really pretty niche. It's pretty down and dirty, actually. But there's a very big value-add service component to our industry called vendor-managed inventories. Now, these vendor-managed inventories, or VMIs, they've been around for a really, really long time. And they haven't changed, more or less, in the last couple decades. And the piece that we were trying to change, that we set out kind of the small incremental movement, was the piece in the middle, the dudes in the truck. We had dudes, and we had trucks, and our dude's name was Jake. And he actually didn't have a truck, he had a Toyota Camry. And we paid him time and mileage every day to drive to some local customers and check their inventory. Now, you can make it a little bit better with barcodes, but somebody still has to scan these barcodes, and we found that just wasn't gonna work. And the brutal part is, a lot of big manufacturers, they can't manage their small parts inventory, so they let the vendors manage it. And when I talk to them, they say, it's free. They do it for us. It's a free service. There's nothing free about this, and it's extremely inefficient to have dudes in trucks out all the time managing these systems. So we said this could be better. We want Jake back in the office. We want our dude working where he's really valuable. We don't want him driving back and forth. So that was it. That's what we were doing, and that's what we set out to originally replace, was just get the dude back in the office. And we just wanted to get rid of that central component. So in a sales meeting, actually, our salespeople said, we can do this. We've done all this great stuff internally. It's time to put it outside and really put it into work in the marketplace. And so we sketched out the concept. It was pretty basic. We started with the concept of, let's use passive RFID tags embedded in the product packaging to monitor the consumption of these small parts in these really large inventory systems. And that was it. I slept on the idea. I woke up, I walked into the office the next day, and I asked my dad, I said, hey, Pops, can I have $15,000 to explore this concept? And he said, sure. To his credit, that was amazing. He said, sure, here's 15 grand. I got one question: what the heck is RFID? And it was kind of funny because at the time I didn't really know either. I knew it was better than barcodes. I knew generally how it worked, but I really knew nothing about it. NFC, Bluetooth, read ranges, blah, blah, blah. I had no clue. And today, I really don't know a ton about it either. I have people like John there in the front row that know a lot about it. But I did have to learn the basics, and I learned the basics, God bless the internet, through Wikipedia and the RFID Journal. I did a lot of research. Put together this fairly simplistic system and purchased some off-the-shelf components, started running a beta in our own warehouse, and wasted a lot of time pursuing a portal concept. And this kind of takes me to my next point. Not that I don't like portals, I love portals. Let's see. There we go. You got to keep it simple, though. A portal, I think, could still work for our application. I would love the concept of guys in a factory, blue-collar dudes who don't really care about managing inventory. They just want it to be there. You have to keep that in mind. But I love the idea, and I think it could work where they can walk in, grab what they need, walk out, and not even know they're being monitored. But for our application, industrial manufacturing, it just was not going to work. And the biggest problem we had with the portal for our application was if you have a whole bunch of small parts in your hands with passive, low-cost tags, your body is the best insulator. We could not really get around that variable, and we couldn't establish perfection, which is really what you need to run an automated system. So we had to keep it simple. And I know cool, I love cool, but cool is just not practical sometimes, especially when you're dealing with folks that don't want to invest heavily in these systems, time and money. So we couldn't put in a cool system, just too many readers, too much complexity. We'd have to rearrange their shelves. It would have been a mess. So eventually we abandoned the portal concept and moved to what we have today. Here it is in all of its glory, I think. It's a checkout station, so it's a static piece of equipment. All the hardware fits in those two drawers. It's a workbench that we buy at Sam's Club, and we love it. It's inexpensive. It can hold all the equipment. We can set it anywhere on the shop floor. If it's a big manufacturing facility, we can deploy 2 or 3 or 4 of these tables, and they monitor the consumption of the inventory. And I even have some pictures of our simplistic labels we use. It's just an intelligent label. The readable portion can be whatever the manufacturer wants to see. It could just be their part number. We'll put whatever info they want on it. And we generate those at the time of shipping, apply them to the bags, ship them to the customer. The inventory goes on their shelves, however they want to put it. Again, they don't want to invest a ton of money in lockers or fancy bins or anything like that. These guys, my customers, are small manufacturers. They're not mom and pops necessarily anymore, but they're not Fortune 500 companies. And they're making this leap to allowing technology to drive their supply chain. That's enough of a leap, so we have to keep it pretty simple. So there's our table. There's my brothers, too, looking all cleaned up. Our beta launched at a local customer in Kansas City, just down the road from us, so if it blew up, we could go fix it. And it didn't blow up. It worked really, really well. We started by monitoring 200 different product SKUs for them. In an inventory like this, you'll have 4 or 5 bags in each bin full of parts, and so you're looking at maybe 2,000 different RFID tags that are tracking these individual components. And it worked really, really well. Month 1, we had done it. We had succeeded. We'd replaced the dude in the truck. We were remotely monitoring our customers' inventory consumption, allowing us to keep them in parts. And that was our original goal. But it wasn't until maybe 6 months in, we had our first meeting with this beta, with this customer. And we realized while staring at this database with him that there was so much more we could do with the data. And it was just one piece of data on every item that he purchases, but it was consumption data. And with his help, with our customer's help, and with our own, creativity, we came up with several different ways to harness this data. So I want to pause for kind of a second here and talk about big data. The term gets thrown around a lot, but coming from a small company who uses big data, you have to be very thoughtful with what you do with your data. If you're going to allow it to drive your company, if you're going to allow it to drive your decisions or drive a system or a supply chain, it's got to be good, big data. So there's 4 V's or variables to big data that I think you need to always ask when looking at data sets. Number one is volume, and I'll apply these to ShelfAware here for our system. Volume, our volume of data is relatively low. Again, it's just consumption of parts. It could be a couple thousand SKUs, and you might establish a couple hundred lines in a day, or in a busy pick day, maybe couple thousand lines, but it's relatively low as far as data sets go. Our variety, 1. Our velocity, it's real time, it's now. And this is probably the most important variable that I think you need to really concentrate on when you're attempting to do a automated system, and that's veracity. Going back to that portal concept, just for a second. If we tried to run that, although it'd be cool, it would yielded us about 96% accuracy on the read rate. And it sounds great, 96 great, but for what we're doing, a truly data-driven automated supply chain, set it and forget it. We needed 99.9. We needed just about perfection. So we had to come up with a system, and the beauty about that table is it makes the user extend the product out past their body, getting it away from that shield, which is your own chest cavity. So that was what we needed, was true data, valuable data, and that was our big data. So this kind of leads me to my third concept for overall value, inventing things or innovating into an industry. If you can drive value out of your data, you can grow your innovation. You can grow it to the point to where you change industries. There's this fancy term called disintermediation, where you move people's cheese. And I like to think of it as an analogy. I love analogies. My brothers hate my analogies, but I think they're really good. This analogy is like a gold mine. If you think of data like a gold mine, your innovation's growth, what you can do with it, is limited by the ROI or the value in that data. And our mountain we're going to be mining today is called Data Mountain, Big Data Mountain. And it's a bunch of ones and zeros or whatever you're tracking. And your value, your ROI, are like seams of gold that go deep down into this mountain. And the systems you set up around your sensors, around your RFID technology, your IoT system, these systems, these analytics, they're what mine your data. They're what mine the data to extract this value for you or for your customer, for the industry as a whole. And you need to follow that data, pursue it. Sometimes your customer will guide you on which direction to go, but you pursue it, and you dig, and you dig, and you dig. And as long as you're bringing back value for everybody, you can keep digging. As soon as you hit a dead end, you're done. Mine shuts down, you close up shop, you gotta move on. For us, it started with just getting the dude off the truck. We were selfishly trying to make ourselves more efficient, thus we could offer the service at a lower price, not bury all these fees into our product price. But what we didn't really realize was just by replacing the dude in the truck, pursuing that one seam of gold, looking at big data later, we changed our direction, pursuing other seams of gold that turned out to be much, much larger. And to kind of explain it, where we're at today with this data set, exploring this concept of a truly automated commodities. I hate calling my stuff commodities because I love O-rings, but they're fractions of pennies. They're highly engineered, but they don't cost anything. So you could just call it, instead of commodities, low-cost consumables, okay? Penny parts, small parts. If you want to truly automate them and you want to do it good, or do a good job of it, and then start to really change the industry, we followed this gold seam to the concept of crowdsourced industrial supply. And our first customer, helped us get there. And what got us there was they came to us quickly after the implementation and said, this is fantastic. We set this thing up and it just hums. I don't cut you purchase orders. You don't push parts on me. The whole thing just flows. It pulls. We consume it. You replenish it. The forecasting's great. And I was saying the same things internally in our office. We can use these numbers to automate our supply chain. I mean, I'm a distributor. I'm a middleman. So I got to buy product. Sometimes there's lead times to that. If I'm importing it, there's a really long lead time. So I needed that data, and I was using that data. We found out that we could completely automate portions of our supply chain from the factory floor at our customer's place all the way to the factory floor in China with this data set and keep the supply chain in parts. And so our customer said, great, we want to do fasteners. We want you to do fittings. We want you to do hose. We want you to do blow molded plastic parts. What else can you do? And the traditional answer, the answer that would have come from my dad's generation was, I'll do anything. I will figure out how to source fasteners, figure out how to source plastic products. I will get big by going horizontal and expanding my product offerings. We almost did that. We thought a long time about it. Here we have this opportunity to just sell more stuff. But we realized that really ShelfAware, this concept, was just bigger than our little company. We had already established a growth curve that seemed to extend forever. We added $1.5 million to our company just last year. And it's just by using this tool. So why pursue something we're not good at? Let's collaborate. Let's offer other folks in our industry who we don't really compete with necessarily. We have some overlap, but let's talk to them. Let's collaborate with them. Let's link arms. Together, we can supply these large manufacturers. And then if you step back and look at industrial distribution today, the largest players in industrial distribution run lots of vendor-managed inventories. Those players are Fastenal, Worth, Grainger, names we know. They're all over sponsorships, commercials, and ads. Those guys, they're huge. They'll sell you bubble gum, hard hats, and everything in between. But they're good at all of those product verticals. They're great at very few. And the dirty secret is they buy their O-rings from me. And they buy their fasteners from my buddy next to me. And so we started talking. If we collaborate on this platform, provide the service level to customers with the best products, the best engineering, and obviously the lowest cost, we'll kick their butts. So that's what we started pursuing. At our first beta, we put our friends, basically, they're down the street, they own another small business, and they sell adapters and hose. And we had a few beers and shook a couple hands, and that was basically the extent of our deal. And we allowed them to hop on our system. It's fairly simplistic. They keep all their inventory at their place. I don't want to touch it. That adds cost, that adds value. And we don't want to charge our customers that. So they keep their inventory, they keep their supply chain. Nothing changes. They keep doing business with the customer. We just put an RFID printer at their location. And we had to change some of their packaging constraints. But they started packaging the parts in smaller consumable quantities instead of this giant box of stuff. And they started just applying the tags. We ship on the same day. The product showed up at the customer's location, gets binned, boom, all of a sudden ShelfAware at our first beta expanded to 400 SKUs. 200 of them were mine, 200 of them were my buddies. And the way ShelfAware decided to make money was by charging my buddies to track their parts. They're all using dudes in trucks. They don't want their dude out in a truck either. They want that money back in their pocket. They want to be able to extend their business past a branch location. That's the beauty of the internet. You can go anywhere with this. So that's the concept we're pursuing today, and what really turned out to be the largest portion of ROI. What I'd like to end on is a little bit of application. And I don't know, how am I doing on time? Help me out, John.
You got 15.
Okay, got lots of time. Okay, the last portion is I'd like to put a little bit of application. Any good sermon or speech, I think, that allows you to walk out of the room and do something today, take some action. So in manufacturing, I want to kind of answer this question to look at it and apply these three really general concepts. Why has manufacturing been so slow to adopt technology? Now I say manufacturing in the US because Europe's kicking our butt as far as adopting technology in manufacturing. I have a lot of European suppliers. Their factories are amazing. They're beautiful, extremely automated, and they've had to do that because they've been forced economically with higher labor rates and smaller spaces. So in the US, though, why have we been so slow to adopt? And I think there's a lot of answers, but the one I chose for this presentation is it's just complicated. A lot of the manufacturing management I talk to are overwhelmed with their day-to-day. It's extremely complicated to assemble a pump, a motor, a hydraulic cylinder, a blender, and they just could not get past the day-to-day complication to even consider or fathom implementing technologies that seem so far out there. It was just overwhelming. So, got a really good quote that goes with this. I love this quote. I don't even really know who this guy is, but I found it in a study, innovation study. The winners of the race will approach the race to Industry 4.0 as a series of sprints, but they'll manage their program as a marathon. So if you realize manufacturing is complicated and you still want to innovate, I think you'll do three things, and they kind of are embodied in this quote. Number one, you'll define a big picture strategy. Yeah, I want you to start small, and that's, I think, the beauty of the quote. Start small. It's a series of races, sprints, and the faster you run them, the further ahead you are in competition. But you need to define a big picture strategy before you start. Draw the finish line, know where you're running, and then start running your race, and start fast. That big picture strategy will allow you to use smaller pieces of technology like ShelfAware, frankly, that is plug and play. There is a lot of technology out there today in the IoT and the RFID space that does not require integration. That's so scary for manufacturers. We don't need to integrate with your system. It's a tool, very specific supply chain automation tool that can rest on its own feet, return an ROI without integrating to your ERP. If we integrate, it's just more bang for our buck, but we can earn our keep without integration. So small pieces of technology, plug and play, that drive towards this big picture strategy. How are you going to drive it? You got to hire a change agent. I've heard him talk a lot yesterday and today about change, and change is hard. Change is very difficult. Our little company has changed a lot, going from my dad's generation to my brother's generation. And a lot of that change was driven because we have a change agent. And he's a hard, cold, ruthless person. And he's my brother, Jay. He's a mean dude. He's really a nice guy. But when he's looking at processes, when he's looking at companies and organizations, he cannot stand apathy. If it's not the best, he wrecks it. He tears it up. And I give him crap because oftentimes he'll shred something and I'll say, okay, now what? Well, I don't know. But I just couldn't stand it, so I destroyed it. And so then the other three of us have to step in and put it back together, come up with a better solution. So hire a change agent, and I think you need to hire somebody from the outside. If you're in a big organization, maybe you could get away with promoting somebody from within, but smaller organizations, you need to bring somebody that doesn't know the people, doesn't have the relationships, because change is difficult. You're going to change processes, you're going to change people's jobs, you're going to mess with their lives. It's uncomfortable. So get a change agent. He'll push you to run this race, and he'll push you in these sprints. Lastly, if you're going to apply these innovation concepts, if you're going to innovate, if you're going to get ahead of the competition, you cannot wait. Your competition has already started. And I'll use one more analogy to kind of wrap this up, because I love them. If you wait on innovation, it will catch you. It'll catch you in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. Your competition will sneak into your house and they'll steal the food right out of your refrigerator. That was what we started to do in our industry, and it's scaring our competition because they haven't even started. We went up to northern Iowa for our second implementation of ShelfAware, and we walked in off the street to a customer we hadn't called on in 15 years. They're kind of a marquee cylinder manufacturer, big place. And we gave them this pitch for the system, got lucky, found a change agent there at their facility, and a champion. He latched onto it, he pulled the trigger, and in 3 months we had the entire supply chain locked up. $1 million in seal business. That's a lot of O-rings, gaskets. $1 million a year. We took it away from 15 of our really good competitors who did nothing wrong. They were doing the same thing that they'd always done, service the heck out of the customer the best way they knew how. We came in with some innovation that changed the game, and we took all their business. That's disruption. You want to be on that side of the disruption. That's why you can't wait. It's scary. You don't want to be on their side of disruption. It's not a good place to be. But real disruptive systems, they're win-wins. So yeah, we won big. We got a new customer. But our customer won big, and that's what I love about innovation. If you create a system that returns enough ROI, your customer will be changed forever, and they are. Energy manufacturing never stocked out of a part. We managed 605 SKUs for them last year. They zero stockouts on 605 small parts. With huge volumes, it's really rare. They had no production delays due to missing components in their assembly area. That allowed them to lower their lead times from design to production of a hydraulic cylinder to 6 weeks, which is unheard of in the hydraulic industry. They grew their business by leaps and bounds and started taking orders they couldn't fill, and they were ecstatic. That's a win-win. When you can take somebody's business and allow the customer that's also interacting with your system to win big, it's great. We can also help our manufacturers win. We're now looking at models where we pull distribution out of the middle. And that's kind of hard for me to say because I'm a distributor. But if you can create an IoT intelligent supply chain that is monitored effectively by RFID, you can automate the entire chain. And it, to a large extent, does what a distributor does. Boots on the ground, dudes that check parts, that manage all of these mosquitoes. It does it for you. So that's the scary part. And again, I think you just need to keep pushing the envelope to make sure that you're on the right side of that disruption. So to review real quick, think small. Small innovations lead to big innovations. Remember, a set of small races, it's a set of sprints. Number 2, keep it practical. Usually means keep it simple. Cool is cool, but it's not always profitable. And number 3, an innovation's growth, or how much you can change an industry, is limited by the innovation's ROI. When you quit finding ROI, you're done innovating. How far can you take it? You never know, but that makes you need to turn your head to the left or the right looking for that ROI. So if you pursue those 3 large concepts and then the application points, I think all of you can get out there today and start to innovate manufacturing and keep us ahead of the competition. So thank you. I think we have a little bit of time. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you think the group would benefit. Otherwise, I can talk to you guys after the presentation. Yes?
I understand your packaging philosophy and using the table to build the component pack and appropriately label that. But how are you monitoring the consumption at your customers?
Good question. So we monitor the consumption at our manufacturer's site by creating choke points, physical choke points. And usually you can walk into a manufacturer's facility, take a quick tour, and figure out where that choke point is. It's going to be different for every manufacturer depending on their manufacturing style and setup. Again, we can't rearrange their entire factory. You know, they have set places where they need to put their CNC. So these small scanning stations go in logical choke points. We do a little bit of training with their employees and tell them there's one rule. I'd love a portal, I'd love a rule-less system, but we have to have one rule to keep this thing cheap, flexible, and inexpensive. The one rule is anytime you grab anything out of these 12 shelves or 15 pallet racks or 30 aisles, walk past one of these tables, wave the parts over them for a split second. You can fling it across like a Frisbee, it doesn't really matter, and go back to work. The tables, the beauty of them is you can set them in the midst of the inventory. There could be 15,000 passive RFID tags literally sitting all around this podium, and if the podium was my station, it will scan none of them out of inventory, not until somebody brings it over the top of the table. So, yeah, that's how we do it. Any other questions? No? All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.